Before we begin attaching the beads, there are just a few little bits that I want to show you which may make your beading a lot easier. The first one is this, which is Nymo thread. It comes either like this on a bobbin, or you can sometimes also get a big spool of it. I've had this literally for years and it is still going strong. Nymo thread is a nylon thread, and when you use it to attach your beads, it becomes almost invisible against the fabric. It's lovely to work with. Like I said, I've used it for years and it's an absolute favorite. If you don't want to use Nymo thread, you can of course just use a strand of TMC or whatever cotton you're using. I would recommend that you just find a shade of cotton that matches the fabric onto which you're going to be working. You will also need a beading needle. So beading needles usually come like this in packs. They're really inexpensive. You can probably see here that they're very long and very skinny. So I have one here to show you. I don't know if you can see that, but they're really long. They're, 2/3 the length of my finger. They're very thin, obviously, so that they can fit through the center of the bead. They're a little bit bendy, so you do need to be quite careful that they don't snap. This one has become a bit bent over time, but that's okay. And then they're very sharp. I will just say that as cross stitchers, we often become very used to using tapestry needles or cross stitch needles, which are quite blunt. And so to move to a beading needle, which is really sharp, can take a little bit of getting used to, and you may find yourself being poked and being prodded because you're just not used to having that sharp tip, or at least that's what happens for me. So here's our beading needle. We've seen our Nymo, and now we are ready to have a look at our beads. So here we have the 5 different types of beads that we're going to be using in the Angel of Christmas chart. As you can see, they all come from a company called Mill Hill, and Mill Hill are kind of the market leader when it comes to beads for needlecraft pieces. They do come from the US, but they are made in Japan, and they are just the most beautiful glass beads you can imagine. They're absolutely divine. The way they reflect the light, the way they look on the piece, there's just no comparison between a glass bead and a plastic bead. They're not massively expensive. I think one of these little packets ranges from about €2.50 to about €4, depending on the size of the packet and the type of bead that you're buying. Now on your chart, it will list the number, so the code of the bead that you need. So then you just need to match up the code on your chart to the code on your bead. And so you may see that they do come in different sizes. So here we have a more standard size seed bead, and you can see this is 557, which is the color code. In this case, it's gold. And then here we have 4557, and the 40 refers to petite beads. So these are the smaller seed beads. So they're the same color, but they're different sizes. We have some cream ones. We have some kind of more of a warm gold or an antique gold here. These are actually some of my favorite beads. And here we have frosted beads, which are a little bit more matte. Just be careful when you're using them. You open the packet upside down, and then you can either work straight from here. You might want to tip them out onto your surface. I actually bizarrely like using the inside of a glasses case. I find that an old sunglass case or a reading glasses case that has that felt lining is great for holding these, and they don't go everywhere. There is special tools you can buy that are kind of sticky for holding your beads. So whatever works for you. But that is what the little packet of beads look like. And we're not going to, we're not going to need the whole pack of these. So we can use what we need and then save the rest for a different project. So here we are at the back of our piece, and I have threaded a length of my Nymo thread through the beading needle. Not always the easiest because the eye of these beading needles tends to be very small, but we got there. and I'm going to anchor in my thread at the back of my piece. And just like the metallic thread, I'm going to go in a few times. So I'm going to just run it through the back of some stitches, pull it through. Then I'm going to go down a couple of stitches and run it through in the opposite direction and give it a little pull. And then I'm going to go back up through a different set of stitches and run it through in the first direction. So we've just gone back and forth a few times, and now our Nymo thread is nice and secure and we're ready to start beading. Here we are at the front of our work, and as you can see, I have done quite a bit of the beading already. And here is our new length of Nymo thread that we threaded through. As you can see, I'm not using a frame, or maybe you can't see, there is no frame. I'm just going to stitch in hand, so just holding the fabric in hand. The reason for that is because if you were to try and force these beads into a frame, you could smash the beads, crush the beads, and just make yourself a bit of a mess. So I find it easier for the beading to just stitch in hand and hold the fabric in my hand. Also, because we have done all of this other stitching, the piece is actually quite stiff, so it's much easier to hold it than it would be if it was just a sort of bare piece of fabric. So that's another reason why I tend to leave my beading for the very last, as the very last thing that I do on a cross stitch piece. So what I have done is I have brought my Nymo up through the bottom left hand corner of a stitch. So just as you would if you were stitching any other type of stitch. So brought it up in the bottom left hand corner. Then I'm just going to take my bead or beads and fish one out. I've got two there, so I'll just pop that other one back in. Pull the bead down. Now you don't really have to do that. It will kind of just fall down of its own accord. So here it's the bead is over here. I'm not going to worry about that. And then I'm just going to pop my needle through the top right hand corner of where that stitch would be. So just like making a normal cross stitch. And then I'm going to reach in the back and just gently pull my thread through. And I think it's become a little bit twisted, not to worry. Now, so there's, oh, you can't see, sorry, there is the bead that we just put onto the fabric. So we don't need to do any kind of a top leg or anything. We can just move on. So our next bead is to go directly below that one. So again, sorry, I know I'm moving the piece out of the camera. Bottom, are you going to focus, my friend? Yes, bottom left hand corner. Pull our Nymo through. Pop another bead onto our needle. So it's just here. Just pull that down. And then pop our needle through what would be the top right hand corner. Reach into the back. And then pull it through. And once again, there is our bead. Now, I do think it's quite important, as I always say, to be consistent with the direction that your leg, for want of a better word, is going. So you can see, I hope, maybe you can't, that all of these beads are actually going in the same direction. So they're all leaning off to the right. And that's because of the way that I have kept the direction of my Nymo thread consistent. Now, if you wanted to, because the needle is so pointy, you could actually have all these beads facing directly upwards. And what you could do is, rather than going into the holes, you could kind of go in the middle of the bottom and the middle of the top, and that would make the beads stand up perfectly vertical and straight. But I actually think, for me, I think they look better off at a diagonal. Sorry, if I may just interrupt here for a second. I think I was having a senior moment when I recorded this clip, because obviously if you want your bead to be vertical or horizontal and not diagonal, you just pull your thread through the holes at the sides or the top or the bottom of the stitch. So rather than using those corner holes that we would usually use while stitching or when stitching a normal cross stitch, you're just using the holes in the top or the bottom or the two sides that we would usually skip when stitching regular cross stitch. I think when I recorded this, I was thinking of Ada, even though I'm very clearly stitching on linen. So I put it down to tiredness or just getting on in years, because I have absolutely no idea what I was thinking when I said all of that. And you can see here at the bottom, we have quite a big section of beads, and these are all facing the same direction. So that is basically how you apply beads, and they are really, really easy to apply once you get the hang of it. And I actually think it's probably the funnest part of stitching. I love beading.